Today, and this is a particular request for something to grapple with. I might just carry on in the same way as I did yesterday, just kind of bringing everything up a little bit, and maybe I'll just linger over this eye for a wee while, because I think there's a particular thing with painting eyes that can feel a little bit like a big deal sometimes, you know. So let's see if I can do something in the area of the eye. Okay, it's quite nice, you know, coming back after lunch. You might feel it's kind of nice revisiting your painting and being a little bit surprised by what happened down there and see what can I do next now. And looking at Lily and back to the page feels like an exciting thing. And to see, like, the first thing I'm noticing is that I kind of want to warm up. I want to bring a little bit of, I think, yellow ochre into the face in general. Maybe not quite that much. I often find that it seems as though there's a warmth where the light meets the dark, that it kind of warms up a little bit more in the transition from dark to light. Let's see, maybe something here where the cheekbone is catching the light. It's probably a bit warmer than it needs to be for the forehead area, but we can always go back to it later. Could do with some warmth, I think, in the ear. And then maybe a bit more of the yellow ochre into the neck. It's a nice kind of a bronzed look there. And maybe that could come across. Let's see. Oh, maybe there. It's funny because it kind of I think when I go teaching in Dublin, you know, they talk about it being a bit like Barry McGuigan kind of going in for the punch. When she got planted, like, he was a famous Irish boxer. I wasn't so sure I was liking the comparison to a male boxer, but anyway. And I thought just a little bit of something kind of warmer in the forehead, maybe. And there's something about, I think, taking ownership over the painting again and doing something that feels kind of general and lively, and, you know, like it reminds us it's just a piece of paper and it's okay, and there's a kind of a, it's fun to play about with the whole thing. Maybe a little bit of alizarin here for the ear, which to me looks like it's got a different hint, maybe closer to the nose and mouth area, that kind of warmer reddish brown colour, maybe not completely committing to the position of the ear there, as you can see, and maybe some of that could also find its way here into the darker area of the jaw. And I'm kind of wanting there to be the, you know, the lift and the drop, finding the things like the position of the nose against the bit of the face on the other side there. And I know I can feel a similar kind of challenge that I see when I walk around, about finding how long is the nose and where does the mouth sit in relation to the nose, and how far across the face is it, and how wide is it, and all of these things. But one of the things that I want to try and look again at is the length of the nose, and to find where the bottom of it, I did press play, where the bottom of it might sit in relation to, and I want to make it kind of warm and dark enough that when I find it, I can plant it and see it. Because there's other marks in the bottom of the nose. I'll finish my sentence, where I want the bottom of the nose to sit in relation to the mouth. And it looks to me like I could do a little leg of the other side of the mouth. I've got this dark colour on here now, I think it'll be okay for the, I'm just noticing that there's a little leg down to the corner of the mouth on that side. It might look a bit odd for a minute now, but if I do that while I see it, and like this colour I had meant to put under there, but sure, it'll be alright. I think there's quite a significant drop down here too, to where the corner of the mouth is sitting. See. I mean, it's really quite a dark colour, but I think I'll leave it before lifting anything off or changing the colour of it. I'm going to see, well, the next thing I'm going to do, actually looking at that lovely mouth, is to do something to make the top of it read a bit clearer. There's a bit of a leg up there and a hairy edge to it the way I've done it, so I'm just going to see if I can find really what's happening here. And it seems more close to horizontal at the top there. And I could maybe bring some of this warm colour that's on this 1/4 inch brush into the upper lip there too. And we can always adjust it again when it's a bit drier. But I'll go back with that colour and see if I can now find where I'd like the nose to sit and the shadow underneath the nose here. Why don't I use the 1/4 inch one? It's more the size. I think the 1/4 inch one is more the size of the part I'm after. Remember, I was wanting it to be dark enough in tone, so I've used the Viridian green that time there, mixed with the cadmium red. Just so that it'll be a different mix from what's in the lips as well. Like, okay, so the tilt upwards of the spherical end of the nose, I think it does need to be down that far in relation to the mouth actually. And I could re-establish too the tilt of that little bit of the shadow that sits underneath the lower lip. And maybe the nostril itself, just judging the distance, the amount of skin that's between the mouth and the nose, and how the nostril sits up into the nose a little bit here, maybe. And then there'll be the fleshy, warm colour that's attached to the skin on the nose here, which is darker than the skin of the cheek that it meets. And this shadow is cast onto the skin below the nose. This cast shadow of the nose is sitting down here, and it comes over, and I could lift it here because there's a triangle of light cheek beyond the nose that doesn't have the same cast shadow on it. And I don't know if that little leg needs to come all the way down. It appears and disappears in my line of vision. I think I'll just leave it a little bit undecided, maybe softer. And I don't really want this to read as nostril, I just want it to read as the underside of the nose, so I'm going to change it to be a little bit more skin-like, I think, and a little bit more the colour of the shadow beneath the nose than the colour of the hole that's the nostril. Because this I want it to look as though it's, you know, the skin on the nose. And because I had originally thought the nose might have been a little bit long, and considering now if maybe the eyebrow needs to come down a little touch there. And then I'm going to do something in the other eyebrow, and I'll do something there for the last 10 minutes then. Yeah, okay. But it's fun, you know, when things have dried a bit and if they're dark enough that you can kind of start to model. I might want to do a little bit of modelling here actually, where there's a light triangle coming in to describe the upper lip, like where the top of the point of the triangle meets the top of the lip there. The point of that triangle of skin, if you like. Okay. Yeah, and there's not I don't think there's a huge change in the eyebrows really. Just mix the blue and brown together and see what I want to do there now. Yeah, oh. It's funny when you stand back, you see other stuff, don't you? And what I'm seeing there is the dark of the jawline. I might want to re-establish the depth of tone here before I start to do any more significant things in the eyebrows and stuff. Just to do something that says, right, this is the bottom of the face now. And it may also just gather some of it and push it up in order to create this wider shadow shape that sits there. And again, if you feel like some things that you place on are really darker than you wanted them to be or harder edged, you could come back with a brush that's just got a little bit of water in it and disperse the paint. So you could use what you've put on as a reservoir and pull it up to create the shadows that you see elsewhere. I can put a little bit more on there now that there's a bit of dark, a bit of water there. Because I think it is quite, with a half closed eyes, there's a significant shift, I think, in the dark to light in the face. Like clearly there's light here and shadow here. And be fitting too to put more shadow at the back of the head there. There's a particularly kind of a soft triangle of shadow, I think, coming in and out there or something. And I see this a similar colour. There's quite a lot of water in that, wasn't there? Similar colour seems to sit up here too, in the forehead maybe. And of course, I could do something. I was saying this to you, Sarah, Susan, who I've decided is Sarah today. I was saying to you as well before lunch, it's handy to have something in the eye area that describes the shadow of the socket, and that it can be dry, and that then, so I'm going to do that so that it's prepared and can be ready for when I do a bit more, so I can let it dry, just to find some sort of shadow that describes the general area of the eye there. You did that beautifully early on, Andrea. The shadow shapes, you had them really chiseled in, planes of the face. Okay, and then I've got some dark colours still on the brush, waiting for when I eventually will do these blessed eyebrows too. I want to just decide where this eyebrow is, and I think it's kind of somewhere maybe in between my two, something like there maybe. That one has a nice arc to it, it's going up fairly high, and then this one seems to be horizontal for a little while from where I'm standing anyway. A little while, and quite a long horizontal bit of it, and then a short little leg extending back there. And as I do that, I'm going to just put some more dark in the lips. The same depth of tone, I think, could drop in here. Holding the brush this way gives a bit more fluidity to it, and you don't have to work so hard to make it dark. You can just let it fall in and be the. It can be the drip, can be the line dividing the lips almost. When you place it like that, it makes its own mark. Okay, and then we also have something similar happening for the nostril, something equally dark, and maybe this eyelash here. It's an indication. You get away with very little on the eye on the other side. You don't have to do an awful lot for us to read it as an eye. And I think maybe the spherical tip of the nose could lift even a little bit more. And of course I've used the nostril colour now, it might be too dark altogether, that dark, yeah. See how it reads as another nostril. So I'm going to lift that and just put a bit more of a brownish colour in maybe. Because I do think there could be a little bit more of a lift to the tip. I don't know, I'm still playing with the position really of these things in relation to each other. A little bit of a lift there. I can come in, you know, it's quite nice to work from the outside in when you're trying to shave off a little bit there, rather than doing it from this side, you know. Unless you're ambidextrous, you could try with your left hand. But just to kind of bring that back a little bit there, and then maybe I'll disperse it so that it flows around the softer shape of the form and the chin. I'm only leaving myself 8 minutes for that, I know, but sure, it's alright. Sometimes, you know how I was talking about like making sure that you do stuff above and below and everything. It's alright too to keep going with the part in the face if you know what you want to do and you want to steadily make progress in the face. I think it's kind of, like when I want to do that, it's fine. But I think if you keep a life in it, it's alright. If you keep building in pauses, not lingering for too long in the face, you know, not lingering for too long over whatever's happening, but draw back, do something general, or even make a general move and then go back in to the part you were working on. You can bring that kind of ease, hopefully, into it. It's when you notice yourself with your shoulders rising up and your belly tensing, then it's a good thing to draw back and do something general, I think, somewhere else. Okay, so this eye. And we've got a kind of nondescript ear over there as well, don't we? What about just even an indication of something to describe the tilt back of the ear? And of course, I often find that the hair is a great thing to describe the edge of the ear, you know, to find where the hair stops and the ear begins. And the ear isn't as high up as the eyebrow there, so I want to cap it with some hair too. And it may be that I put it too far back now. Let's see. Yeah, I probably have, haven't I? Here. I can just what I would do there now is just kind of lose it again. Just let myself have still the option of moving it forward if I need to. And I'll do something in this eye, and then we can go back and decide. Because I was talking about how the front of the jaw is really where the ear connects with the face around the jawline, and I probably could do with being a centimetre closer, I don't know. But I think when I do the eye, it will help me. So the eye is lower on the right hand side. As I'm looking at Lily, it's her left eye, my right, is lower than the eye on this side, and they need to relate to each other. And I want to do maybe first the eyelash line, and to see the line of the eyelash. It actually, in this instance, it looks like it connects with the eyebrow on that side, almost. It's not the same direction now, it's a little bit more close to horizontal. But in placing the line of the eyelid, or you could say the eyelash line, I would say, rather than thinking about painting an eye, just look at the shape of the skin that you're making between the eyebrow and that eyelash line there. And how far back, it maybe needs to come further back actually, because it's almost as far back as the corner of the eyebrow is. And it sits back well, like the inner corner of the eye sits back from the flesh of the nostril. It sits back from the eyebrow here. The inner corner of the eye might be, you know, not far from, it's not far from halfway through the eyebrow. Although we don't want it to be very dominant dark actually. I'm just going to lift that. Okay, so that was kind of floundering there trying to find the two, but I think it's okay. I think one of them could represent the eyelash line, the lower one, and the upper one where the skin of the eyelid meets the circle of the eye. We can put a little bit of kind of warm colour. We'd use the cadmium red and some yellow ochre. Just wanting to make a kind of burnt sienna kind of colour to take into the skin between the eyebrow and the eye there. I want it to read like skin, but it is in shadow, so I'm happy for it to be darker than the cheek below is. So just something to explain the shape and the colour of the skin between the eyebrow and the eyelid. And then some of that same tone can be in the space here between the bridge of the nose and the dip in for the cavity where the eyeball sits. And it comes across here a little bit. There's a little bit of a shadow underneath the eye as well there. And I think yesterday we spoke about the shadow that's kind of hugging the eyeball, coming up to meet the upper surface of the lower lid. So it can be quite dark. The skin coming up. Let's see. I mean, I know it's kind of hard to see from this distance, but we know that there's a plateau of flat skin. That's the upper surface of the lower lid. That would be like a step into where the iris sits. And so this is an effort to explain the shadow on the skin below that upper surface of the lower lid. And anyway, I'm going to see if I can now do the dark of the iris. So Lily, there's 3 more minutes. I'm going to see if I can explain where the iris sits, and I'm looking at the position of the iris in relation again to the width of the eyebrow, and where along that width will the eye sit. It's a bit closer to the left than so the left side of the iris is closer to the inner corner of the eyebrow than the outer corner, but it's not far off halfway along, I think. And I wanted to sit down a little bit further. It seems to me that it's narrower than it is high from this angle, and there's a kind of a lovely curve at the bottom of it, and it seems to sit back a little bit, I think. Yeah, it might be back a wee bit further than it should have, but now let me see. Maybe something like that. And of course you can, once you've got something there, and like I was saying yesterday, you might need to tolerate it looking or feeling a bit odd for a little while. You can kind of stand back and see what you've got and see what needs to be altered to make it closer to what you're seeing. And what I feel like is that there needs to be a smaller white area in the corner of the eye here. And maybe with my eyes half closed, there's not an awful lot of white there at all, and I could actually use something nondescript, a kind of a greyish colour picked up here, with half closed eyes to reduce the volume of that and to do something to kind of get the shape of the shadows around there more clearly for myself. The position of the shadows around there. Maybe we can bring some of that same dark across here too, and down into the C shape of the nostril that sits here. I think that's okay, you know. And then the dark of the upper eyelash line is a helpful dark to find again. And just to help me, I'm looking again to notice where does the iris meet that dark line. And you know, there's one down here too, but I don't think it's going to help me so much as the upper eyelid does. To find the dark of the upper eyelid is more helpful, I think. And also maybe re-establish the dark in the eyebrow too. And there's another little touch of, I could even maybe find something of the iris over there, kind of. And then just to give a sense of some bit of detail in the eye, and I'm kind of aware as I'm working with the eye, I want to move the iris a little bit into the left. So as I'm adjusting it, I'm going to cajole it along this way because I think it needs to be closer to the nose a little bit. So I'm going to just shave a little bit off with a clean damp brush. Shave a little bit off the right side of the iris there. And maybe just put something warm. You might find that it's helpful to use colour to distinguish parts of the eye from each other. It doesn't always have to be tone. You could find something like this cadmium red maybe might be helpful mixed in with some darker colours to, you know, the cadmium red mixed with some green or brown or something to say this is the inner corner of the eye. Oh, look at that. Lily, seriously, could I have one more minute? Yeah, thanks. I thought she was going to charge more there for a second. Say anything. Yeah. I'm just going to push the iris along a little bit, I think. Just a little bit, actually adding some of that ultramarine blue. And I might inject a tiny bit of it, just something green actually, into that red, so it's not quite so red. But I want there to be something there that isn't the same as everything around it. And I'm going to do another little shave of that iris along here. I have literally given myself a minute now, so I'm really on the clock. And the last thing I would suggest is just shaving it along a little bit again. And the last thing I would suggest is to see if you can make, and I know it's hard to see, but we know that the pupil is hanging down there, and it's really going to be the darkest part. And there might be a shadow, if you wanted to go up closer, of the overhanging the eyelid, casting a shadow onto the iris. At the top it might be a little bit darker than at the bottom of the iris. So that's what I'm going to do with this little touch here. It's going to take me 30 seconds. So I'm going to push and lift with the very dark colour and let it maybe drop down like a kind of pendulum down into the eye where the iris might sit. And you know, it might just be enough just to give it a little bit more detail, a feeling of something a little bit more, with a little bit more contrast, and you know, to feel like more like an eye kind of. And when it's dry, you can sculpt. Thanks very much, Lily. Thank you. When it's dry, you could sculpt around that pupil if you wanted to further enhance the dark and light, and you know, walk up to Lily if you want to see. But I think there generally is a lighter colour around the pupil, and it can give you a feeling of a little bit of detail in the midst of all this floundering. To have that point, I think is good. Okay, well thanks very much, Lily, and thanks very much everybody for your attention, and all the very best now for the next couple of sessions for the afternoon. And we stop at 3:30 to look at everybody's work. So there'll be another 2 half-hour sittings, I think. Okay, and move out of your way. Maybe just hold it up there. Forget to do this.